Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to urge my colleagues to join my resolution about IVF, expressing support for the continued access to fertility care and assisted reproductive technology such as in vitro fertilization, in light of Alabama's court ruling last week that has jeopardized access to in vitro fertilization and other assisted reproductive technology in the state of Alabama. For years now, since 2019, I've been advocating for women's issues and women's rights on the issue of contraception, on the issue of contraceptives, on the issue of abortion exceptions, particularly and for life of the mother, rape and incest. In 2019, I told my story as a state lawmaker, a survivor of rape, when the state of South Carolina was doing its fetal heartbeat bill, and it had no exceptions for women who were raped or for girls who are victims of incest. And I was frustrated by that argument because very few women were actually speaking up about women and about those exceptions. And ever since then, I've become very passionate about protecting women, about protecting their rights, protecting access to IVF, etc. And the one thing I want to say today, because I have co-sponsored legislation and resolutions by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle as it relates to contraception, as it relates to contraceptives, as it relates to providing information and protecting IVF, and yet not a single one of them, because they were Democrats, got criticized for the legislation. Yet today, I'm trying to work with members on both sides of the aisle together to condemn the ruling in Alabama, to express our sentiment and express our support for IVF access for women all across the country. So when a Republican does it, it should be equally supported by the corporate media, but apparently it's not. So I'm urging my colleagues today to get beyond the divisive politics and look forward in how we can actually work together, because this IVF issue shouldn't be Republican and it shouldn't be Democrat. The vast majority of Americans, I dare say almost every single American in this country, almost 100%, support efforts to protect women's access to IVF. The other thing I want to mention is last year I co-sponsored HRES 345, Debbie Wasserman Schultz resolution, by the way, that recognized that infertility is a widespread problem that affects populations of diverse ages, races, ethnicities, and genders. 12% of women in the U.S. have difficulty getting pregnant or staying pregnant, and 9% of men experience infertility. The resolution acknowledged that infertility is a disease, that infertility is not just a women's issue because it impacts men also. This is a family's issue. The federal government has a moral obligation to ensure the availability of infertility-related services to all individuals and families without barriers such as access, cost, and coverage. I would like to remind the press that I also was only one of 8 Republicans that voted in favor of Kathy Manning's Right to Contraception Act. Greater Access to Contraceptive Options Act ensured women and families across the country have a right to obtain and use contraception. It's a common sense measure, rape, incest, or in order to maintain a healthy and well-functioning body. Reducing the number of unwanted pregnancies requires increasing contraceptives available to couples, women, etc. And the last thing I want to say is that beyond the numbers as it relates to my resolution regarding support for IVF, that IVF has a genuinely positive impact on individuals, families, and communities. IVF and other assisted reproductive technologies contribute to the birth of over 10 million babies globally every single year. In the U.S., 12% of women of reproductive age have utilized assisted reproductive technology. Infertility is a deeply personal and obviously devastating issue. And so I'm calling on my colleagues today on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat alike, to join me in expressing the sentiment in the whole House of Representatives that our dedication to protecting the American dream of starting a family by co-sponsoring this resolution. And I yield back. Thank you, Madam Speaker.